Welcome back, folks. This episode of the podcast is once again supported by our friends over at 35bikes.com. 35 Bikes are dedicated to bringing you the best bike components for the best prices. So what do you need? It's winter. Maybe you need some brake pads, mud guards. You want to treat yourself to a new stem cap and have it personalized? Then head to 35bikes.com, enter promo code podcast, and you can get 20% off your next order and also take advantage of free shipping. 35bikes.com, promo code podcast. Once again, this episode is also supported by Saxx Underwear. Saxx is the fastest growing underwear brand on planet Earth, and with brand ambassadors like Ken Block, Danny Hart, and Brooke McDonald, to name a few, it's pretty simple to see why. If you haven't experienced Saxx Underwear yet, then I urge you to go to saxxunderwear.com, find your local stockist, go over, part with your money, and have your life changed forever. Every day you wear underwear, so make sure you're wearing ones that protect your nuts, stop your gooch from sweating, give you a little hug every time you put them over your legs and thighs. It's simple. Get involved. saxxunderwear.com. Tell them we sent you. Over and out. Let's get on with the first podcast of 2018.
Hi, I'm Ollie Wilkins, and this is the Hook It Podcast. Hold tight, freshers. Okay.
Hell yeah, folks. Welcome back. Episode number 41 of the Hook It Podcast. The first one of 2018. We're back. New Year's resolutions are kicking in. We're having fun. Guys, again, if you're new, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for checking it out. If you've been around for a while, then thanks for coming back and keeping coming back. Thank you for the support over last year. Hopefully you enjoyed the last episode, which was a mix of all my favorite bits from 2017. A load of cool stories and fun stuff and inspirational bits and whatnot. So Happy New Year, guys. We've got the Bike Play show coming up this coming weekend. For all the dealers that listen, we'll be there 14th to 16th of Jan. Head over, Media Folk Tea, if you want to come over and chat podcast, feel free. Let's come and have a chat. Got a new thing launching on Wednesday on the Hook It Podcast Instagram. I'm going to do a hump day quiz, just because hump days suck. So, Hump Day Quiz. If you don't already follow us, it's at the Hook It Podcast. It'll be in the Instagram stories. Little quiz, and then we'll do a bit of a giveaway. All that sort of cool stuff. So, keep your eyes peeled for that on Wednesday. Obviously, on today's show, we've got Mike Redding, the guy who is now responsible for Fasthouse MTB. I've looked up to Mike for a long time, so it's stoked to have him on the podcast and sit and be able to have a chat with him. Let's not hold this thing up. Let's have Mike on the show. So here we go, episode 41, loud and clear. Osh. All right, man. Yeah, we're recording. I guess on today's show we have Mike Redding, now of Fasthouse. So Mike, welcome and thank you again a bunch for doing this. It's much appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to do this.
Hey, man, no problem at all. I wanted to kick this off actually with a little story. This is kind of weird, but I was thinking about this today while I was driving home. So I actually used to live in California. I lived there for around 3.5, 4 years on and off. I was at a place called MX Heaven, which I'm not sure if you've heard of that before. But
I haven't.
So MX Heaven basically was a motocross sort of training school, but it was also a holiday venue. So people from the UK and Sweden or wherever used to come over. And while I lived there, one of my jobs was sort of looking after people, take them riding, go out, take them around all the shops and stuff. So obviously one of the things I used to do was take all these people to Troy Lee.
Now I remember the van. Yes, no, I know now. It took me a second to think about it, and then I was like, there was you and another guy, right?
That
used to come by. Go ahead.
So obviously, for anyone listening who has never been to Troy Lee, I'm not sure if Troy Lee's in the same place in Corona, but I mean, it was like a museum, right? Like so sick inside. It had like Pastrana's bar spin bike and Formula One cars and mountain bike stuff, like obviously tons of helmets and stuff and memorabilia. But
Yep.
one of the things I actually used to do was, back then I was pretty close to Petey. So whenever I flew home, I used to call into Troy Lee before I came home, grab some helmets for him, bring him back to England. And
Oh, yes.
and I never actually got to meet you, but every time I went in there, I'd be told by Steve, like, oh, ask for Mike Reddin, he'll come down, he'll give you the helmets. And I never met you in person, but every time I walked in there, there were some pretty hot girls who worked there too, and they, kind of look at me like, what's this, young English guy doing asking for Mike? Like, anyway, so all these helmets would come, and I'd always think, oh man, who is Mike Reddin? Like, what's his job? He's like connected to Steve, and he works in this insane environment at Troy Lee Designs, and it's weird because I always kind of I've kind of looked up to you because I kind of, do you know what I mean? Like, I was really inspired by like the job that you had and whatever. I didn't really know what you did. It's, before social media.
Yep.
So I couldn't really like follow you, figure stuff out. And then I was thinking about it in the car today while I'm driving, and I was like, shit, you fast forward 10 years or so, and here we are throwing down a podcast and, finally get a chance to speak to you properly, which is, it's just crazy. So
yeah,
there you go.
I mean, I no, that's so funny because working at Troy's, like, I think, I met so many people working there and being part of that whole deal.
Yeah.
I think it was an awesome time too in mountain biking when a lot of stuff was happening in the 90s between like with Palmer and Petey and all that. So it was, it was a good time, and me and Petey became friends, over the time, and it's really funny how it just all played out to this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Here we are sitting here, and that was, gosh, like you said, almost 8-9 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
I can't remember what age I was. I mean, I'm 31 now, and I'm pretty sure I lived there between sort of like 17 to like 21, maybe, on and off.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy. I was thinking about it today. Like, I've always, every time I see you pop up in a video or an interview, I always think back. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Mike. I always used to ask for him in the shop and never actually got to meet you, but it was pretty cool back then, flying home with all these helmets for Steve all the time and stuff.
Yeah,
crazy.
That's so funny. I can't, now I remember you guys coming in, and we used to get quite a few, there was quite a few tours always that came by there, and it was always, like from you guys, there was other people too, so it was a constant, and I was always probably floating around trying to avoid work of some kind, I would imagine, or out of the office, or trying to be out of the office, out in the field hanging out with probably Steve and whoever else.
Such a cool time though back then. Like, it brings back some super fun memories, and it's weird because I still, I sort of think about this all the time, but I still kind of see California as almost like home, because I sort of did all my growing up there. Like, I went there at like 16, 17 years of age on my own. So that's crazy. All of my growing up was done there, and I always just think like that's inevitably where I need to end up at some point in my life, So,
that's wild.
Yeah,
I've been here my whole life, so
okay,
it's pretty crazy, and how the scenes and riding has gone up and down, and like pros lived out here, and when Petey had his house in Huntington Beach, that was like prime time, there was so many other English guys that came over and stayed with Petey, and I met so many of them because of that.
Right.
And I lived in Huntington at the same time, and I probably lived like 2 blocks from them.
Really?
So I was always cruising over, to the house all the time and hanging out with those guys. Yeah. And I probably at one point sponsored probably half the English National Series with Troy Lee stuff because of all those kids that stayed at Steve's house.
Right. That's crazy.
And it was always good because I met Titley, and there was all of Steve's friends. I met all those guys because of that, and it was awesome. It's a fun time, when shuttling in the Golden Princess and all that stuff, which is the truck that he had, which was really cool. Yeah. And so it was a good time, and it connected me to a lot of the English riders that, that I ended up working with, so it was a lot of fun. That was a good time.
Yeah, dude. Crazy. But yeah, it definitely got me thinking about that today while I was driving, and Wow, it's weird how things turn out, eh? So
well, maybe you'll end up in California sooner or later.
You never know. It's definitely right there. It's on my to-do list. I need to buy a house there, even if it's just a summer house. So I go over and spend a few months over there. So,
yeah.
That's the plan. But
that's a good place.
Yeah, it is. It's a really, like I said, I've got a lot of fond memories. Been over there working and sort of just, been in a bit of a bubble, but I just love the country, man. I was back over maybe 4 years ago. It was just before we started Hook It. So I kind of went over and a friend of mine owns a company called Ride California. So it's pretty similar concept as what MX7 was. So he brings people over from the UK or wherever, and people live in the house. And I think he's got like 10 brand new dirt bikes and go riding. So I went over and just hung out with Sam for a little while. And just got my life together, did some thinking and stuff like that. So,
what you were going to do, right?
Yeah. That's pretty much what happened. And then came back and started this. So wild.
No, it's good though. You know, like the inspiration thing, how you get inspired to do stuff is pretty amazing, and what it takes sometimes to go do other things to get inspired to do the next thing, For
sure. But I've got a lot to thank you for. Even like back then, it was just, I just remember like thinking about, Mike Redding, I wonder what he does, it's so crazy. I can't even imagine. Anyway.
Well, being a team manager for, I've done this for a long time.
Yes.
And I think I've been really lucky to, I've worked with some of the best guys in the sport, obviously. And it's been awesome. Like, and being at Troy's, that was part of the deal too. And the people even outside of the mountain bike industry that I got to work with was pretty amazing when I worked at Troy's, because that was such the hub back then.
Yeah.
And it was like so many people like would come by on a daily. It was really funny.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Crazy.
Wow. So I wanted to kind of rewind the story of Mike Redden a little bit, if that's okay. I'd like to. The cool thing is with this as well, with podcasting with you, is like with a lot of professional athletes, you can really go online and delve into where they came from and stuff. But like with you, you're kind of like one of the unsung heroes of the sport behind the scenes. Do you know what I mean? So it's you don't seem to have done many interviews or anything like that where you can kind of figure out where I don't know what you used to do, where you used to live. So,
I've always kind of been behind the scenes and purposely, like I've always dealt with athletes, and that's the story,
Right.
And it's been fun being behind the scenes. And if people know, they know who I am, but a lot of people don't, which is awesome. And even it was always funny, even at Fox and at Troy, like Fox, especially with the social media thing, I always tell like the Joshes and those guys in camera, don't tag me my personal
right
in your post.
Okay.
Because then I get like crazy, and it's okay now. But, back then I'd always, try to be more mellow about it. Do you know what I mean? And not be, I was more behind the scenes, and it was more fun that way. Okay. And, so. But now,
that makes sense. There's definitely a fine balance with that stuff. It's something that I think about on the daily. You're like, you want to build your social media presence, even if it's your personal one, but you also don't want to get too tied down to it too. So. Yeah.
No, for sure.
It can take over pretty fast. But
it can.
But before you were working at Troy Lee and everything, then like you said before, you grew up in California, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I grew up in California. I mean, I got into the mountain bike thing. I raced motorcycles when I was a kid, so I have that background, of being around the motorcycle thing from the time I raced. I think started racing at 5 years old.
Okay.
And then I raced till I was about 16 or 17, and then I stopped. And then, I went to Hollywood, and I was doing a lot of the roadie stuff and working for bands and working for Golden Voice and that part of it, and I was skateboarding a lot too. I really got into skateboarding at the time because I had time to. Being a roadie and that kind of stuff allows you, a lot of time. I'd work mostly weekends. So during the week we skated a lot, and then I don't know, like it's really weird, the mountain bike thing. I think back and I just saw some kind of I think I saw a mountain bike magazine, and I was looking through it and I was like, man, this is kind of cool, right? And this kind of reminds me of riding motorcycles, and I, back then I had no money, and I saved up money, and I think the first bike I bought was a GT Cuesta.
Oh, right, nice.
Yeah, And then, I started riding it like to work, and then ride it on trails a little bit here and there, and discovering the mountain bike thing. And, and I started reading the magazines and was kind of like a fan, right? And just got into it. And then I was like, oh, this will be easy. Like, I'll try to race. And I remember the first race I got like, it was a cross country race because I didn't have downhill back then. And I got like halfway through and just completely blew up and quit. Like I walked back to my car, like so defeated. Like, this is like terrible, right? So,
wow.
And it just kind of grew from there, and just getting one of my best friends still, Jeff Holt. He works for like Hot Bike and that, like the whole chopper industry now. And back then he, when I started getting into this, he was working at a place called Bike Beat, which was one of the first mountain bike shops in Southern California back in like, the early 90s. And it was weird. I walked in and I went to school with junior high and high school, and we went to like punk rock shows and all that stuff. So it was really funny because Troy Lee had come out with their Edge helmet. And I was like, man, that's kind of like a moto helmet. It's cool. Like, I want to get one. And no one carried it, right? And I didn't know. Back in mountain biking was so new back then. Like, I go in there and they had it. And it turns out my best friend Jeff was working behind the counter, which was super random, right? That I hadn't seen for a while, that I went to junior high and high school with. And then we reconnected, and then it just kind of went from there, getting back into mountain biking. And I was lucky too, as my dad was really good friends with Richard Cunningham and another guy, Tom Reitmeyer, who built all my dirt track bikes when I was a kid.
Right.
And that connected in a weird way too. And then I started hanging out with Richard and those guys and doing these crazy rides,
Wow. Okay.
And, and it just kind of like just snowballed, you know what I mean? And it was at the very beginning. That was probably, 94, 95, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Like, and so it was pretty wild.
So what, you mentioned you were working for bands and stuff. So were you, you're a roadie before, right?
Yeah, I was a roadie, and I worked for Rat Sound. And Rat Sound did all like the Golden Voice shows in Hollywood, which were a lot of like the punk rock shows, and like Beastie Boys at the time, and Jane's Addiction, Chili Peppers, like all those kind of, like that was what was happening at the time. And it was cool because I could go to any of the shows even after I stopped working, right? I could go to those shows and hang out. I could just, it was a lot of fun. So I saw a lot of bands.
That's cool.
During that time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you got some wild stories too.
Yeah, a few. It was a lot of fun. And I like the music thing. I was always obsessed with. Even like I'm still a big music fan and always have been.
Right.
You're
still pretty much into the same sort of genres too. So punk rock.
I listen. Yeah, I think I probably listen to a lot of punk rock, but there's just a lot. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I mean, my collection, like I love like jazz, to to punk rock, to rock, to hip hop, to I listen to like old Funkadelic and Parliament, to Bob Marley, and a lot of the reggae and ska stuff I really like still. So it just depends the mood. I probably on my iPod I probably have a pretty good range of stuff, and lately I've been listening to The Kills, which I really like, and that whole thing, which Dave Grohl and Foo Fighters and that whole side of it, all that stuff's new and it's cool. It's not, outdated, I should say. So
yeah, it's, I kind of recently rediscovered Strung Out, but I say recently, like mainly because of the Fasthouse videos. Berryman and Durham were putting out all the videos, which always had a Strung Out soundtrack. So yeah, we can come back to this in a little while, but I kind of like rediscovered Strung Out because of that, and kind of similar to you. I've always been into sort of punk rock, and went to a few sort of pretty cool shows while I was over there too. But yeah, similar, man, to be honest. I've always been into music and stuff like that as well,
No, I've been lucky. I mean, being here in SoCal too, it's like being in the music side of it, one of my best friends is good friends with the drummer from NoFX.
Oh, right.
And Eric, and I met him, and he was doing the Moto Triple X thing and all that. And so we've become friends through him, right? And then also the drummer from Rancid too. He rides mountain bikes, and he's friends with Ken Block, and he like does a lot of stuff, he has like side by side and all that. And it's always funny when you get all these circles going of friends, right? Like it's, so I still love, I think Rancid and, it's probably still one of my favorite bands, and the Clash. Like those are always go-tos,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Awesome. So, you said before, obviously, before you started working in the mountain bike industry, you kind of got into it and met up with Jeff again and all that sort of stuff. But what actually got you into working in the bike industry?
I think I it was really funny. I want to say started racing. I was racing like cross country and all that stuff. And then, I started riding with Richard and those guys, Richard Cunningham. They used to do these Tuesdays and Thursday night rides. Uh-huh. And then like through the bike beat thing, I was meeting people, and then my kidneys failed. Right. Okay. And so, then I wasn't able to do a lot of that stuff. Right. Cause I was on dialysis for probably a year before I got my first transplant.
Wow. Okay.
And that was during the whole bike thing that I started. And then somehow after my first transplant, I don't know, I was looking for a job, and then I had friends, and I met Troy somehow at something. And then, I don't even remember through who, and maybe because of the bike beat, and Troy was selling their stuff at the bike beat at the time. So, and then it just took on. And then like one of his guys, Anthony, that did a lot of media and artwork and stuff, needed a helper. And I just went in and was like, yeah, sure. I'll be part of this. Right. Yeah. And that was like, in the 90s, before even, they were in the, it was started in the first building, like the second or third building, but it was, once they first started kind of going in the 90s. And then once I got there, it just, I started meeting all these people, and, and I was going to a lot of the races with Jeff and all that, even, before that time during Bike Beat, that I met a lot of people, Yeah. Yeah. And Jeff was quite the marketer and talker, so he would talk to everybody. It was really funny,
And I guess this is kind of like around the time when mountain biking is just kind of starting to take off too. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like the whole thing was like, it was like during that peak in the 90s, It was during that time, and I was just lucky to be there, I suppose.
Yeah, sure. He literally got there right at the right moment. Obviously, Troy Lee's got its heritages in sort of like motocross and a lot of other motorsports too. But yeah, it must have been cool, man, to be there and sort of see the evolution of mountain biking, and like you say, the Edge helmet and
all that stuff. And I worked with Jeff too.
Right.
Both of us worked at Tioga for a little while.
Okay.
That was the before Troy's. Okay. So there was like a probably a stint of a year maybe that I worked with him and another guy, Dave Wooten, and Dave Wooten ran Tioga Europe. And then that was the other tie-in to me going over to Europe for the first couple times, was Dave always took care of me, Wooten, even when it was pretty funny before I started at Troy's.
Right. So you spent some time in Europe. Wow.
Yeah, I was lucky, to go over there.
It's cold, eh?
Wooten, Wooten, like those first World Cups, and I was a fan, total fan of it. And I was like, and that's when they had like semis, and like the whole thing was a big deal, and it was cool, and never thought that I would end up where I'm at now. Going to those first races I went to as a fan.
Yeah. Crazy. Wow, it's so cool to see how it's all sort of developed and stuff. So obviously Troy gave you a chance. So did he sort of need somebody to come in and start with the mountain bike side a little bit, or was it purely by chance?
I think it was pretty much by chance. Like, I think I was already involved in it a little bit because of the Bike Beat thing, and then I already knew Richard and some of the media things when I went to Troy's, because I was at Tioga for a year before that, and then I did a little bit of time. I helped go from he was a moto guy that had this company, Goat Eyewear, and they sold like sunglasses and goggles and stuff, and they wanted to get in the bike a little bit, and so I kind of helped for like a year there, and then that kind of ended, and they weren't, change direction, and they were like selling glasses at like the gas stations and stuff like that. So it's like, from being a moto brand, and they were kind of still in the moto, and then they never really got into bike because it was so early, right?
Yeah.
And then I made it over to Troy's.
Okay.
And I was kind of already established in bike a little bit because of Jeff and Tioga and the goat thing.
So did you, when you started at Troy Lee, then did you start at the bottom, or did you pretty much?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like, I was just a helper basically when I started at Troy's. There was a guy, Anthony, that I worked with, and I did all kinds of stuff. And, and I knew the athletes at that time. I think I started to meet them through when I was at Tioga and stuff. So I had a little bit of, of that. And then, like, when you worked at Troy's, you did everything. Like, I did, shipping, I swept floors, like, back then, like, and you wore a lot of hats because the company was so small, right?
Yeah.
So, you did a lot of different things, and then it just took off.
Wow.
And then I started doing bike for them, and I always did the bike thing, and I did all, like, the heat transfers, and, was kind of, was there, for that part of it. And then it grew into, running the bike program basically, which was cool.
Wow. So,
and Troy, go ahead.
No, after you go.
Yeah, no, it's just amazing how that, and I was there, I think 11 years at Troy. So over 11 years period of how that grew into what it grew into, it was crazy.
Yeah. Kind of like the golden age of mountain biking growing, it became cool around that sort of time, if you ask me, with the painted helmets and, cool kit and all that sort of stuff. Like, yeah, I kind of remember that pretty fondly too. So were you sort of responsible for bringing in sort of like Petey and Palmer and those kind of guys then?
Yeah, Petey already, I think like those guys were there. Petey was there a year before I got there, and so was Palmer.
Right.
And then those guys were there already, and then I brought in Sam Hill to the mix.
Right.
So I think that was probably, one of the first guys that I think I brought in. Petey and Palmer were already there and established, but Petey won the first World Cup title on all Troy Lee. And that was a big deal. And then he had started Royal, obviously. And, and that changed. But yeah, so, and getting to work with those guys was awesome. And, and at that time that I was, running the bike program by then, and, being able to sit with Troy and do a lot of the designs and all that, wow. I learned a lot about colors and, paint and all that, just by being around for that. So, and, and Petey was awesome because he always, was game to paint crazy stuff on his helmet, obviously, from, alcohol logos to the, the pink middle finger to, all the little stuff that we did, and the drawings, the bar scene that was around his helmet at one of them, and the urinal scene, you know what I mean? he would call and go, hey, I want to do this. And then we'd be like, oh man, okay. We talked to Troy. So, and Troy was always game, which was a lot of fun back then.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy times there, but I can't even imagine how cool that must have been. So did you, were you involved with all like the Stephen Palmer stuff then on the bus and all that sort of time?
Yeah, I was around. Yeah. I was in the bus and in the mix, and it was always chaotic. When Palm brought the bus out, that was like, it was ridiculous. And I wasn't as good of friends with him as I was with Petey. I just started to get to know Palm at that time. So, I was involved with some of it, but some of it, it was always entertainment. Let's put it that way.
Kind of back to like the punk rock touring times, right?
Oh yeah, no, and that's what, and Palm always was a big fan of like punk rock and all that stuff. So it's like he, that's what he thrived on, and that was the whole snowboard persona too. I think it was always a good time and wild.
So obviously after the 11 years at Troy Lee, you moved over to Fox.
Yep.
How and why did that come around?
I just think that at Troy, it's like you get to a certain point in just life and stuff. I was like, I wanted to do something different and change to what I wanted to do. I think, it was like the next step for me to go to that. And Fox was like, at the time, they were like the number one deal, right? Like to work for Fox was a big deal. And I remember being so nervous going there and applying and all that stuff and trying. And I bugged Todd Hicks, who was like one of my people that I looked up to when he worked at Fox, when he did all the Palmer kits and all that stuff. Yeah. Bugging him on the phone and a couple of the other guys that worked there. And, that towards the end when I was like, okay, I need to go to the next thing. Right. And I think there was time. And then I just, I wanted to run my own program. And I think that it just worked out. And I ended up, the guy that was running the program there had left. And, I got in there and it was, it was a rad 7 years. It was good.
What were like the major differences then that between like Fox and Troy Lee Designs that kind of you could tell straight away? Do you know what I mean? Obviously Fox is, I'm not even sure, I'm going to guess it's pretty much a bigger company, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's, I think just bigger company, different size. I think the budgets were, more, and just being able to do more stuff. And at the time when I moved to Fox, I had my first boss over there was Jim Infuso, and he was awesome. And, he had a punk rock background too. That's right. Probably why I got hired. Right. Yeah. So I was lucky. Right. And so he, kind of just let me go with it. Right. And, let me do my thing. And he helped out a lot. And I learned a lot there at the beginning, because on the rider support side, the team manager side, I could do that pretty much with my eyes closed, right? Like I knew, like I'd done it at Troy's for 11 years, right? Or 10 years basically. And so, but the other side I was responsible for at Fox, which I wasn't as much at Troy, was the marketing side of really, producing the stuff and being more organized and creating schedules and all that kind of stuff and budgets. And, and I never at that level that, it's just a different level of working and learning. And it was awesome because I learned so much, being there too. Yeah. And I think that was and I remember being really nervous, and I was so green at marketing, even though I was doing stuff when I was at Troy's. When you get to Fox, it's a whole different level, from all that, the ad buys and being organized and all that kind of stuff, and coming up with campaigns and concepts and all that, for the marketing side of it, which was a lot different.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's something that I'm pretty curious about myself, because obviously I run a distribution company. So marketing is something which is, I mean, it's a crazy space. I really, really don't understand it. I've got no background in marketing at all. Nothing. Not one single thing. I think there's a lot more goes into it than a lot of people might think. It's not just a case of posting on Instagram and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, what sort of budget annually would someone like Fox spend?
I can't say, but it was decent for the bike at the time. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Compared to, you have Troy Lee, which is pretty small compared to Fox, which is pretty big. And they kind of, when I came in there, they decided to really get back into mountain biking, right? Yeah. And really push it. And so, I was given, pretty decent, not pretty decent, but not like, I think a lot of people mistake that as being really big. Right. It wasn't super big. It wasn't a lot more than what, Troy's, but it was, where we could do stuff and make stuff happen and do videos. Like we first started doing videos, and it was a lot of fun. And, and it wasn't like I had a crazy budget to go, oh, here's $30,000 to do a video. We were doing videos for like, a couple grand, right? Yeah. Like it was small back then still.
But that's like the cool thing with social media, I guess, is you can do stuff pretty cheap and it come out awesome. I mean,
yeah, no, especially now. Like it's pretty wild, right?
Yeah. I mean, you look at like what the two Joshes are doing with 50 to 1. Josh Lewis was on the podcast a little while ago, and he was saying, there's no real budget there. They just crack on with it, and it's amazing what you can achieve, really.
No, and it's funny. It's like I think back to when I was at Fox and like all the print ads and all that stuff that that we were doing, and that side of it before the social media really started to kick in. And then, then it became buying, all the digital ads and no more print, right? Like it was pretty wild, the change of the landscape and how that happened. And then the videos became, even more important than, because you could, everything connected digitally, right? Like, you can promote the video on all your digital, on, your social media platforms. And I was lucky Fox had huge social media platforms, like as far as, Facebook and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, when we started first doing the videos, it was really fun. And I think the first Fox video I did was with Cam and Tyler McCall.
Right.
And it was like, we didn't, I think we ended up putting it on like Vimeo or something like that in the end, because it kept crashing our site, right? It was on our site, and it was really funny. And the response that we got was pretty wild, and those were the first days of doing videos, like that, and then putting them out there. And it was always really fun. And I think I did something close to, produced probably over, I don't know, like maybe close to 40 videos when I was at Fox.
Wow.
With everybody over, we were doing 3 or 4 a year, for 7 years. So it was pretty crazy.
It's interesting, actually. So where do you sort of see that stuff going now? Obviously, you're seeing a lot more sort of feature films coming out. I know you've obviously been in with like Joe and his new Gamble film, those sort of things,
Yeah, so, I think it's cool, because I think, there's a couple of ways it's going. I feel like, because the video, there's so much saturation with the videos now. Everybody puts out a video, right? And I think it was good. Like, even, when I was at Fox and we did the Ride Your Fucking Bike movie, right?
Yeah, so sick.
It was kind of like, okay, I really didn't want to do videos, right? I think, I was like, okay, we've done this. And I think people are going more long format and like more like, I don't know, a little more time spent than just going out and going, hey, we're going to go shoot this area in the woods, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think there's a little more time and effort put into the projects. And then, and then you have the other extreme of the Joshes going out and, they're doing that stuff on a daily, right? And putting it out, and it's awesome. I think it, it can be real down and dirty, or, super, super professional. It doesn't, it's pretty crazy, the differences now. And it's really hard, because I feel like the mountain bike thing now it's in a strange space of what's next, right?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you totally. Yeah. It's really, really, really hard to predict. I mean, one of the reasons for kind of starting the podcast, to be honest, is just to do something which is totally different. Like, there wasn't really anyone doing this at the time, so it's like, oh, we'll just do that then. It's just something which, to market a company and the business, it's just different. It's obviously since taken on a bit of a life of its own, but initially the whole vibe of this podcast was just to connect it to the company and like a bit of a marketing tool. We don't really have much of a marketing budget, to be honest with you, so it's about doing different things, and it's kind of worked, but you're always sort of on the lookout for the next thing. What is it? It's really hard.
No. It is true. It's like, what's the next platforms that, that stuff's going to be on, and it's always changing. Like, it seems like on a constant of, but I mean, lately, obviously, between Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, is there going to be another one of those, right? And is it going to be a different format? And I think it's crazy how much marketing and, is done on all the social media platforms. Like you said, it's amazing, and I think even with Fasthouse, they've been, very successful on the moto side doing it that way, right? And putting out content and promoting it to the website and to, the social media.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Let's move on and chat about Fasthouse, man. I'm stoked for this. Obviously, I'm a huge moto fan, and I've been following the progress of Fasthouse since, I think, trying to think about, like, I first maybe saw it on some Troy Lee gear back in the day. But obviously watching it develop and all that sort of stuff, and watching the videos of Berryman and Durham and all those guys, like
yeah,
I
no,
love the brand. Like I'm so stoked on it. So when I saw that you guys were sort of branching into mountain biking, it's a bit of me, this is, to be honest. So for people listening who might not necessarily know much about Fasthouse, can you give like a bit of a summary about what the brand's all about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Kenny Alexander, who started it, he's been doing Day in the Dirt, right, for 20 years, and it's like a big motorcycle festival over Thanksgiving weekend. And actually, this last year was his 20th year of doing it. So, and I think he was always in, like with Troy was one of the title sponsors at one time, and now Red Bull is. But, you know, he always was around, and I've known Kenny for, almost 20 years now because of the Troy thing, right? And he was always coming in, and him and Troy were always messing around with stuff and, you know, coming up with ideas and stuff when they were, you know, doing Day in the Dirt stuff. So there was like limited, you know, stuff being done. And then Kenny had his t-shirt company, Elrod, which they were, you know, doing stuff through that. And I think they had used the Fasthouse name at the time. And then maybe 3 years ago, he started Fasthouse.
Right. And,
you know, it started out selling t-shirts and jerseys basically. And it just kind of, you know, took off and has grown. And, you know, he used to ride mountain bikes and stuff too. And he used to do Over the Hump series, like the one in LA County. They had like a series here, and like there's one in Orange County, there's one there. And so he's been around the mountain bike thing for a little while. And then his dad formed the NBA, which is the National Bicycle Association, back in like 71, 72,
right,
and put on BMX races, right? So the history is there a little more than I think people, you know, realize, because it, you know, you have to look into the brand and check it out. And so, and Kenny's just been this guy that's, you know, has had cool ideas. He was a stunt man and super, you know, involved in that. And during Day in the Dirt, a lot of those guys rode motorcycles and came out and, you know, did the Day in the Dirt deal. And so I knew Kenny, and it just worked out. And then one of my friends, Scott Dixon, who does designs for him, you know, we talk all the time, and he did all like the New World Disorder video boxes and all that kind of stuff, right? And we were talking like a year ago, and I, you know, and he was doing stuff for Kenny, and I was just kind of mentioned like, hey, you know, if there was ever a chance, I'd be interested, right? And as things progressed, you know, things were happening at Fox. I was kind of you know, thinking of a different path that I wanted to go on, and, you know, it just worked out. And then Scott had called me and kind of said, hey, like, I think we're going to do bike. And, you know, and then I started conversations with Kenny, like, you know, probably last year sometime. And, you know, just kind of went back and forth, and, you know, and then it just worked out. And I was super stoked that, you know, he was like, okay, let's do it. And I was like, all right. And, you know, they had designed their first, you know, run of stuff, which will drop this spring. You know, by the time that, you know, I got involved, and then, you know, he was kind of like, hey, like, let's make this happen. And he's super creative and awesome to work for. And, you know, it's worked out. And just, you know, with the team thing, like, our dog, you know, was on my mind about it. You know, like, he was somebody I wanted to work with even when I was at Fox, and it just didn't work out ever, right?
Yeah.
And then he was good friends with Tyler Bierman too, right?
Okay.
So it was kind of weird. And Bierman was already, you know, talking to him before I even came to Fasthouse, and, you know, showed him the line. This was all happening around August, right, during Crankworks time, and you know.
Yeah,
and
then I saw like Bowman was at all the Fest Series events. Well, not all, but like a lot of Fest Series stuff.
Yeah, no, he loves the mountain bike thing, and he's been, you know, he's been really supportive too. Like, each time when the athletes have come in, he's been there and hung out, and he's, you know, super supportive of the program. And it's been rad to see, and he loves mountain biking too. You know, you know, it's pretty cool, and you know, it's just the whole thing's, you know, kind of just fell into place. And then, you know, the thing, you know, it's like our dog was first, and then, you know, having Tyler McCall come on the program was awesome too, you know, and we've always been tight. So
it seems like from the outside looking in, it's the perfect fit for you. You know, like the branding, everything around the company just seems to work. Like, I'd be surprised if you weren't there. Do you know what I mean?
No, that's and it's, everybody said that when I moved from Fox to there, and I was like, in my mind too, like I saw it and I was like, man, this kind of brand fits me really well, and it's located in California, like there was just a lot of good things. Like it's just crazy. And then talking to Kenny, and Kenny has a lot of the same visions that I wanted for what we wanted to do, and that and it wasn't like before. I'd always been so involved with the World Cup and the racing thing, right?
Yeah.
And this is the first time that I was like, oh, this will be more fun. This is like kind of what the Joshes were already doing, right? And I was involved with that a little bit, and I always appreciated how they started their thing, and that's why we kind of did the movie, and dedicated to Steve, obviously, but it just keeps carrying over, if that makes sense,
Yeah, it does totally.
And I think having Tyler, and our dog, and then having a meal was really cool too, like and then Bubba Warren, I was watching him all last year too, and I wanted him on the program, and he's in San Diego, and then those two are in NorCal, so it's awesome having them all in California except Emil.
Yeah.
But so
no, it's one of the things I noticed when you did the team sort of launch. There's some similarities between like the moto team and the mountain bike team. So in the fact that, like, I wouldn't say the guys are under the radar, but like you said, they're not racing World Cups or anything. They're just sort of like looks like a fun group of dudes, basically, which is exactly the same concept of what you guys are going for with the moto stuff.
It is, and it's like it's funny because we have 4 and 4 as of right now, right? Like for that, and the moto guys would, it's pretty rad because it's very similar on, and that's a vision of Kenny's, that when he was already doing a moto, and that's probably what attracted me to the brand was like, it's super cool and edgy, which I like, and it's got that like kind of punk rock feel.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, man, it fits. And then he was kind of already, doing all the free ride stuff with the moto guys, and they weren't racing supercrosses or, outdoors all the time. It wasn't the focus, right? It was more about riding and having fun with your friends. So
is that something that you guys straight away look for? You look for personalities, and sort of like results and stuff is kind of like second in a way. Obviously, you've got Emil, who's FMB world champion, but
and that's funny. Yeah, and that just kind of, that whole thing just worked out. And I, the other part of this is the Bell helmet side of it. We do a collab with them, and they're helping us. So we share the athletes, obviously, and it's it just worked out, and I had met Emil at in Austria at Crankworks for the first time, and I was lucky. I got invited to a Trek dinner one of the nights that we were there, and ended up talking to him and stuff, and and it was just funny how it worked out that he would be on Fasthouse later on, right? Like you just don't know, when you talk to people and you're around athletes and stuff, and he, he's a super rad kid. Like I'm excited to work with him too.
Yeah, I bet.
And I think that, he's got a lot ahead of him in the future, and it's, it's going to be real awesome to be part of that,
Yeah. So, although it's probably quite obvious, what's your exact job role at Fasthouse?
Everything that has to do with mountain biking.
Okay. Okay.
No. I would just say, I don't like titles and all that. I've never been a big fan of that, So I would assume it's just doing all the bike stuff, all the mountain bike stuff as of right now, and and helping out as much as I can, and doing the marketing and the team, and then whatever I can help out on the sales side of connecting people. Right, I won't do sales or anything, obviously, but we have a small team, so. We all have to help each other basically to make it go forward, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's good. I'm excited about it, but it's we got a lot going.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So, like, what's a typical day in a week looking like for you right now? You said that you've got a home office.
Yeah.
So you know you're not based at Fasthouse HQ or anything. So what's kind of a typical day looking
Well, I
like
go
right now?
usually I go into Fasthouse twice a week.
Right.
So it just depends, you know. I mean, lately we've been getting all the we have videos, you know, obviously lined up that we're getting ready to shoot, and just, you know, everyday stuff like that, and making calls, and you know, as far as, you know, I built, you know, the team part of it, and just working with the graphic guys, and you know, they have gear that's already started for 19, and you know, our fall rollout, and I wouldn't want to call it that, but it's like more of a late spring, right?
Okay.
Or late summer, I'm sorry. And just, you know, getting things in line, and getting schedules together and what we're going to do. And, you know, there's always stuff going on, like constantly.
Yeah. Sounds like an exciting time. It's something that, obviously when I've seen all the posts on Pink Bike and Vital and stuff, a lot of people have been asking about the range. So is there a set mountain bike range in the pipeline?
Yeah. There's a full range, pants, shorts.
Wow.
So, you know, and obviously, you know, it's going to be small at first. It's not going to be a huge thing because we're a small company. So I think it's exciting for me because I get to watch it grow and watch the whole program grow. And we'll have mountain bike jerseys, shorts, trail jerseys, gloves, you know, and then I think down the road, you know, we'll be doing pads and stuff like that too. You know, I mean, it's all part of, you know, rolling it out in a slow, you know, take our time and do it right thing, you know?
Yeah. Oh, it's super exciting, man. So what's been the most fun thing you've done so far since starting at Fasthouse?
Oh, I think that I really enjoy, like, putting the team together was, you know, there's always a lot of fun, and picking the personalities and what's, I feel like, you know, would work for Fasthouse. So that was, you know, exciting and stressful at the same time, because, you know, getting athletes to go to a new company is not, you know, for them it's new, right? Even though we're established in moto, but for bike.
Yeah, I was surprised actually. Again, like looking through the comments on the forums and sort of on posts, you know, a lot of people hadn't necessarily heard of Fasthouse, but I think again, like I maybe just took it for granted because I'm so into like the moto side of the brand anyway, and the industry. But I think it can only be a good thing, man. Like the designs are so sick.
Thank you. I mean,
hey man, are you like having a bit to do then with the design aspect of the new?
No, this first rollout it was already done pretty much as far as the design, and I have a little bit of influence, but you know, we have great like, you know, our graphic design guys and stuff, and Kenny, you know, it was almost already set before I got there, right?
Yeah.
So that formula of what it looks like and everything's kind of set, and you know, I think that as it goes along, you know, it's going to make changes and stuff, but like that was already there before I got there, and that's why I was attracted to it, you know?
Yeah. I'm interested too then, with you being, you know, in charge of the bike side over there at Fasthouse, what's the hardest aspect of your job?
Ooh, the hardest.
It sounds good.
I think just, I think that just because it's new, it's, you know, putting all these pieces together basically to make something really fun.
Right.
You know, there's a lot that goes into it, and basically going in there, they had started the bike line and stuff, but we're kind of starting from scratch, right?
Yeah.
And obviously there's a lot of people that don't know what Fasthouse is, so you know, that's, you know, kind of my job to make that happen, right? To let people know. And I think that like that's probably, you know, just organizing and getting it all together, and you know, coming up with ideas to push it out there is probably the hardest part of it, you know?
Yeah. Like we were saying before, just kind of figuring out what's the best thing to do, you know, like where you sort of put the money and stuff. It's fucking hard right now.
Yeah. No, it is. And I think too, it's just as far as the image of it and what it is, it's like, you know, coming up with fun stuff to do.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, we don't want to be, that fits it, that, you know, we're not like super serious, you know.
Yeah, no, that's,
we want to have
again,
fun at it, you know?
Something that's really come across on the moto side is it all fits brand all the time. You know, there's been nothing which you think like that's a bit, I don't know, a bit corporate or whatever. It's always sort of fitted brand, and I think that's, again, from my point of view, that's awesome. You know, I'm big sort of into marketing and how brands look and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, massive props for the team that have been doing that. It's looked sick from day one. It really
and
has.
Kenny and those guys, and Kenny and those guys have been doing that, and you know, I'm lucky to come in and build the bike off of it, and you know, I think in the end, like me and Kenny talked, and it's like, I think for me anyways, you know, it's like when you have the most fun is when you go out and ride with your friends, whether, you know, you're out on trail bikes or at the park or whatever, you know, and I think that's the kind of the message, you know, it's going out and having fun riding your bike. Like that's, you know, and not really caring what's around you, right? Like go out and rip with your friends, and those are always the best stories afterwards too. Like think how many times when you go out and ride with your buddies, and then the funny stories afterwards, you know, when you get back, right? Like, you know, I feel that's what's, you know, more and bad. And I think, you know, I got inspired to do more of that kind of style is like, we have a bike park. I live like probably almost 2 hours from Snow Summit, right?
Okay.
And I go there quite a bit and ride, and I got really hooked on riding that park, you know, and I go with my cousins, and my cousins are, you know, are awesome, and they're just normal guys out riding bikes and having fun. So, you know, that really sparked me when I started going with them all the time, and how funny they were about it. Reminded me about starting, right? And going through the whole thing of learning how to ride bikes, and the, you know, it just getting better at it. And it was really fun to be able to ride with those. And I still, you know, and I think I've been riding with them for 4 years, and they still make me laugh when we go out, and I go do laps with them at Summit, and they love it as much as I do, you know, and that's where I think it's at, you know.
No, I agree, man. Totally. And again, you know, you only have to look at like what the Joshes are doing and stuff. And I think that whole side of mountain biking's maybe been lost for a little while. Maybe it got a little serious. I don't know, but again,
I think you're right. You know,
maybe needs a brand like Fasthouse to come in and mix it up a little bit.
And I think too, it's like the Joshes have done a really good job of having fun on bikes again, and not really worried about, you know, how the guys look and what they're doing. They just go out and do it because they'd love to do it. And I think that's important, you know. And when they were out here for one of the bike tour things, and I got a ride between them and do a lap with them at Summit, and I was laughing the whole time down the hill, and they were hooting and hollering, and, you know, I was like, oh my goodness, you know, like it was really fun. And you know, like those are the kind of things like that's, you know, when you go ride with your friends, that's what happens, you know. And I think that's cool.
For sure. So I'm also interested in like, what's the bike industry like right now in the USA? Mainly because things are changing pretty quickly over here in the UK, and it takes from working in the motor industry before, it seems to take like 6 months for things in the States to transition to the UK, give or take. So like, what's happening in the USA right now? Obviously, you've got a lot of brands going direct. Is Fasthouse the direct brand, or is it going to be available in stores?
It'll be available in stores and then direct too, both. Okay. You know, I think that like that's probably, you know, it's so hard to, you know, the business model of what we want to do, but we've gotten so much interest in it, right? And people that want to carry it. So, you know, I think we'll just kind of play it by ear as we go.
Okay.
And see what feels best, I think. And the bike industry, I don't like, it's always tough, you know, because it's changing on what people are doing, and the marketing guys of, you know, what's getting supported and what's not getting supported, you know, and so it's always interesting to see how companies, you know, do things and what's happening. And, you know, I think it's in like not a weird spot, but it's just, I don't like, maybe it was on such a fever pitch grow for a little bit. And now I feel like it's flattened out a little, but in a good spot, not in a bad spot. And I think people are trying to figure out, you know, what they want to do,
where to go,
where to go. And I think that's with anything, you know, it's like it gets to a point, and then it's like, okay, what direction do we take now, you know? And so we'll just have to wait and see. I think it's, you know, exciting. Like a lot of people, you know, riding trail bikes on everything, you know, downhill bikes. And I think in general, it's like, you know, if you're riding your bike and you're having fun, and I think bringing that back again, it's like that's what it's about, you know. And if you're racing, that's awesome too, you know. But I think more of it's, you know, getting out and riding and having fun, being positive out there, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, 100%. It's just the industry over here in the UK is crazy right now. It seems to be changing so fast with brands coming in, going direct, and distributors going direct. There's just so much going on. I just kind of, like I say again, you know, been a business owner here. Like, I'm just curious what was going on over there.
Yeah, no, and I wish I had more.
Together.
Yeah, I wish I kind of sometimes too get to the point of like things are happening and I don't pay as much attention, you know, to the bikes. Like, I mean,
and sometimes the best way though, so you don't get caught up in it.
Yeah, kind of like you don't get caught up in it, and it's like it's going to go the direction it's going to go. And I always say this with Fasthouse, it's like, you know, we want to do what we want to do regardless of kind of what's happening around, right? Like we're gonna do our thing, and it's going to be fun, and you know, and other people can worry about whatever everybody else is doing, you know. Like I think that's the big thing of, you know, just moving forward and having fun with the brand. Like that's, you know, and I, whatever everybody else is doing, okay, well, fine, that's cool, do it, you know.
Yeah, cool, man.
If that makes sense.
I can't wait to see what the future holds for Fasthouse. I'm excited about it, you know. Obviously we've got nothing to do with it here at Hook It, but even so, I'm just stoked. I can't wait. I think the industry needs a brand like Fasthouse to come into it and mix things up a little bit. The marketing's amazing. Hopefully it'll, you know, I wouldn't say elevate everyone else's games. It's not bad, but do you know what I mean? Like, it just makes people think about it differently.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, and I thought, you know, I feel like too, it's like the Joshes have already been doing that, right? It's, you know, and I think it just keeps going. Like, and I think all the influences of skateboarding, and like I've always, you know, I still snowboard obviously, and we were talking about that earlier, and you know, I wish I could skateboard, but my ankles are so smoked from when I was a kid, right? But like what's happening and all that stuff is so fun and cool, and I think just taking, you know, bits and pieces from all that, it's good, and bike can be that direction. It doesn't, you know, always have to be about race and competition, you know, and it's just like, I think yesterday before, like Tyler and our dog posted these 2 videos on their Instagram that it looked so fun, right? Like they were just like going so fast and just, you know, roosting every corner, and when you see stuff like that, that's like. That's fun stuff. You know, right? Like you're like, I want to go do that, right? You know, and I think that's where we're gonna be at, you know. Yeah,
for sure. No, I agree, man. Sick. All right, you want to? I don't want to keep you too long, so do you want to? Should we fire through some listener questions, if that's all right?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
See if I can answer them.
All right. First one. You'll probably know him, Mad Dog Boris. So at I can't say it again, man. At Mad Dog Boris, I want to hear his best rock and roll / concert backstage story.
Wow. I think, I mean, it's always tough because you know, it'd have to be R-rated probably.
It's all right.
No, but I think that I mean, probably the funnest thing. I went out on tour with Pato Bonton at one time, and we started in California and ended up in Florida, and it was kind of a crazy tour. We were all in a van, and those guys, everybody's smoking a lot of weed and talking, you know, for like 10 days of, you know, of God talk and religious talk, right? Like we go all the way to Florida, and it was kind of crazy and fun. I got to Florida, and the Chili Peppers were in Florida at the same time. And so I kind of got fed up with the tour a little bit, and I was like, okay, I need to get off. And one of my best friends, Mark, at the time, who I hung out with a lot, was the tour manager for the Chili Peppers. And he was like, hey, we're in Orlando. Just meet us in Orlando, and you can hang out with us for like, you know, 4 or 5 days. And I was like, all right. So I literally just I was driving the van. I pulled over, got my stuff, got out of the van on the side of the road, and started walking away. I was done, right? And I was so frustrated. So I was like, okay, I grabbed my skateboard, my roadie case, and a backpack, and took off on the side of the road. I probably could have gotten eaten by, like, you know, crocodiles or some crap, but I didn't even know. But being young and naive was probably a good thing. And so I got close to one of the highways that went back to Orlando, and I just thumbed, and these girls picked me up that were going to spring break.
Right. Wow.
And they had
This is a movie.
had a case of beer. Yeah, like they had a case of beer in the back. So I drank with them all the way back to Orlando, and then I told them like, hey, I'm going to this Chili Peppers concert and blah blah. And I ended up hanging out with one of the girls the whole time I was in Orlando, and then she drove me to the show. And then once I was at the show, then I got to hang out with them for 2 or 3 days, and we did dates, and it was super fun. And they played in Miami, and
right.
It was this crazy time, right? Of those guys getting wild, and it's just fun, super fun time. The hotel, I think the elevator got broken. It was just always is chaotic, the whole deal. And then they finished up and they flew home, and I took a Greyhound bus from Florida all the way back to California, and that was 4-day experience, right? and skateboarding, I had all the stops, like the bus would pull over, right? And so it was always fun, and I learned a lot about life back then, I should say.
Yeah, I bet.
Wow. And I worked for like Golden Voice too at the time, and Rat Sound. And Rat Sound, I think they probably still do sound for the Chili Peppers, and I think they do sound for Pearl Jam. And so I worked with this guy Dave. He owned it, and I was like, I was always working on the weekends, and that was a lot of fun times, and skateboarding, and got to witness a lot of great shows back then. And that was like, in the heyday of like Beastie Boys, Chili Peppers, Jane's Addiction. All those bands were always playing like the Palladium in Hollywood. So, I worked pretty much every weekend, and it was a lot of fun,
yeah,
during those times.
Sounds like you do a lot of growing up when you're out on the road on your own and stuff, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And it was just cool. And you meet a lot of like, people out when you're doing that. So it was interesting times for sure.
For sure.
So,
all right. Cool story, man. Next one, at Nar Bike Park. Please ask Mike if he was responsible for signing a 13-year-old T-Mac.
No, I wasn't. I was at TLD, and I'm not sure who signed him. It might have been Chris Gagan was there, I think. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Okay.
At Fox, yeah.
Sweet. Next one, let's have a look here. What we got? Wow, we got quite a lot, dude. At Can't Quit Cartel. 80s BMX or early 90s MX, who had the best kit? That's a good question.
So, yeah, so I would say, I want to say the 80s, it was JT had the best moto kits, because like O'Mara, like when O'Mara rode those Mugen Hondas, and he had like the boot covers and all that stuff. That stuff was so cool. Yeah. And I think Lachine might have rode in 80s, in the early 80s for JT too. Like that stuff was always really cool. And the BMX side, I never was around the BMX stuff.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I was racing motorcycles. So, I didn't really, I don't have like a favorite to say or,
That's cool. I was thinking, I saw that question earlier, and I was thinking back to like late 90s motocross kit was the best, if you ask me. The No Fear stuff that McGrath used to run.
Yeah.
Oh man, that stuff was to die
I mean,
for.
there was so much good stuff. Even like the 80s stuff was like all that. The progression of motocross gear has been pretty like amazing over the time. It's crazy.
It has. All right, dude. Next one. At Billy Spurway. Will Fasthouse bring MTB specific kit out? Yes, you will. I'll answer that one for you, dude.
Yep.
Sorry, I should have read that one first. All right. At Ride.5, my buddy Darren. The bold, non-busy style of Fasthouse is pure class and leads the way in my opinion. Lots of MX kit companies seem to be dipping into it now. What inspired this look? And would we ever see a different Fasthouse in the future? Wow.
The look, it was inspired, and it was there before I got there. So Kenny and those guys, I think a lot of it came from the old, like the desert racers back in like the 70s and stuff, like on any Sunday times of, all the real plain bold jerseys with like the checkered arms, and the vest. They used to wear like vest over their jerseys that were like that was your motorcycle club basically.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I raced desert, so I know that, and I think some of that inspiration came from there, and just Kenny's quite like he's been around moto for a long time and really enjoys like the heritage of it and stuff. So a lot of that looks probably come from that kind of stuff. So
cool. Yeah, like I said before, I love the style. I think it's fucking rad. Sorry.
No, I'm so excited to bring it into the bike side of it.
Yeah.
I think it'll, I was stoked that our dog repped it at Rampage to kind of give us the first little bit of a look, because I think a lot of other companies, like you said, even in bike, will dip into it. I think you'll see a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, last but not least, let's get high 420 on Instagram. Quite a fitting name for someone, especially having a California guy on the podcast too, right? Who would you put your money on for Monster Supercross Championship after a wild first race? Oh, man.
Ken Roxon.
Really?
All day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think he's going to be unbeatable this year?
I think as the time goes, he'll, I mean, he had like, if you watch the first half of the race, he was probably one of the fastest guys out there.
Yeah.
For sure. And then he had that bobble in the middle and kind of backed it back down, but he still was,
I think perfect
so
execution
good
for Kenny. Like, come in, get A1 out of the way.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy. Obviously, his fastest in qualifying too, which is probably a good
Yeah.
confidence boost. Yeah, the speed's there. So you're saying Kenny?
Yeah, for sure.
It's hard
Kenny,
to bet against him, man. I'd love to have a different opinion, but fuck, it's going to be hard to bet against Kenny. But I don't know.
I think following his Instagram, when he came back from all this, like the motivation and drive that guy has.
Yeah.
Like,
the bleed for this butt patch as well, and
like the stuff that he went through. If you followed his Instagram account, like crazy.
Yeah.
And I think like he's so motivated and driven, like that he's going to be hard to beat, especially, I think anything like, to get the nerves out of the way after A1 was probably a big deal for him, and,
definitely.
And I think he's just going to get better. I feel like he could be the guy for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a good season. I really hope it is. I know you say this every year, and the last couple have been awesome. So, huge moto fan here. So yeah, bring it on. I'm stoked for it. I can't wait.
Yeah.
All right, man.
It'll be good.
Last one. This is from me. I want to know what song we should play to start the podcast, because I always leave that one kind of open to interpretation. So, what should we play?
Oh man,
some good intro music.
I would, let's see. There's let me think what song it is. Hold on one second.
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you. It's Lars Fredriksson and the Bastards.
Okay.
It's like one of my CD, but I'm going to tell you what song. Hold on one second here.
Please don't report us if you listen to this. Lars Fredriksson and
the Bastards. Yeah.
Nah, it's cool. Should be fine.
Let's see. It's a good one. Maybe, man, that's a tough one.
Hell yeah. I always like to do something a little bit different at the start of this. I was actually using before, do you know Daniel Blair?
Yeah.
Yeah? So Daniel was in a band called Main Event Moto. And since the Main Event podcast started, I wouldn't say I'm like super friendly with Daniel, but we exchange messages quite a lot. And stuff.
Yeah.
So he gave me permission to use all the Main Event music, so I've been using that. And then every now and again, it's cool just to drop something random in there, keep it exciting,
I would say the first track on Bastards.
Okay.
I love that song.
All right, I'll find it out. It'll be on the start of this podcast.
Yeah, find it out.
Kick it off,
and then
and
you
end
could
as
always
well.
like too. If you can't find it, you go any Rancid song's always good.
Yes. Well, that was the one I was going to go for. I
don't want you to get in trouble.
No, exactly. Trying to be careful.
And if you have to use the Daniel Blair, that's fine too. It's always tough, right? Like
it is.
Sweet,
dude. Well, for anyone listening, where can they find out more about Fasthouse and what's going on with the MTB team?
Just keep track on the fasthouse.com. Keep going on the site, and we'll be updating it as we go along, and then also social media, of course, of Fasthouse.
Yeah, if you're not following Fasthouse already, get on it, because there's some awesome images posted. And I didn't realize until the other couple of days too, like the website is so deep with cool stories and like images, and oh man, there's so much cool stuff on there. So
there's a lot of great content and stories that Kenny's, that's the thing with Kenny, is it's done such an awesome job with that side of it. And it's like, there's a lot of history there, and so go on the website and check it out, because there's a lot of cool moto stuff.
Yeah.
If you're a moto head, and now we're going to get the chance to start the bike side of it, so it's going to be fun.
All right, man, it's been an absolute blast to sit and chat to you. I appreciate it so much, and I wish you all the best with Fasthouse. It's going to be awesome to watch it do its thing, and hopefully we get to catch up pretty soon properly too.
Yeah. All right. Thank you,
dude.
sir.
You take care.
All right.
Peace. And there you have it, folks. Episode number 41 in the bag with Mike Reddin. I hope you all agree. Cool podcast. Really nice to sit and have a chat with Mike. If you don't already, head over, follow Fasthouse at Fasthouse with a little underscore after it, fasthouse.com. And also don't forget to follow us too. It's at the Hook It Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and just at Hook It Products on Twitter. If you have enjoyed this episode, please head over to iTunes, leave a little review. 5 stars if you can. If not, be honest, leave a little review. Make it funny so we can have a bit of a giggle about it when I see it. And that's it. There'll be a new home for the podcast too, so keep your eyes for that. That'll be going live pretty soon. Can't say much more just yet. And that's a wrap. See you guys at the bike place if you're heading there. If not, we'll be back middle of Jan, episode 42, with another killer guest. Peace.